And I just
Okay.
heard that. So I see again, we have more people joining us. If you're joining us today, the last half hour, we've had some fun in the waiting room, but thank you so much for being here with us today for the Evangelizing Catechist webinar with Joe Paprocki. Today, the tables get flipped a little bit because Joe is usually hosting me on webinars, but today I get to be the hostess, hopefully with the mostess, and welcome you all, and to really just thank you for your support and share a little bit with you about Joe's new book, Preparing Hearts and Minds, which is just really a wonderful reflection of his years of experience and also the heart with which he brings to Evangelizing Catechesis. Denise is here with us on tech support. And so if you have any technical difficulties, just let us know. And we'll be using the chat bar to cultivate some chat in various places and interact. But if you have questions for us today, please use the Q&A bar. And so, Joe, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Julianne. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm just absolutely thrilled that you agreed to host this for us. I'm honored to have you hosting a webinar that's going to talk about a book that I wrote. So I'm excited about getting into the topic with you. Thanks again, Julianne, and thanks to everyone for being here.
You are welcome. We're just going to get started. We're just going to dive right in. But before we do that, Joe, just going to take just a moment for prayer, and then we will start with that definition of evangelizing catechesis. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. God our Father, we thank you for the gift of being together today. We ask your blessings on all those gathered here today and their ministries, especially our catechists who will be preparing to welcome students of all ages into their classrooms. Grant us courage and strength during these days, and bless us with a renewed sense of hope and confidence in you. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
In the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, Joe, this is I'm really excited to share this conversation with you about evangelizing catechesis. So there's been a lot of dialogue in the last couple of years around the word evangelization and what it means and how it pertains to catechesis. But we now have this definition of evangelizing catechesis, which comes out of the USCCB here. And so you can see that reflected on screen here. I just want to highlight a couple of words which Joe is going to be really unpacking in this webinar. So we hear terms like personal encounter, charisma, accompany people to a response of faith, conversion, God's revelation, and missionary discipleship as witnesses to the good news of salvation who promote a new vision of life. So we've heard a lot of these terms. This is officially the definition that the USCCB, the United States Conference on of Catholic Bishops, is using. It comes from their Committee on Evangelization and Catechesis. It just was promulgated in April of this year. And Joe is going to kind of, throughout this webinar, help us understand not just what the words mean and how to apply that in our own context, but also what it looks like, an adapted and enculturated response in the various ministries that we find ourselves part of. So let's talk about Joe for a moment here. Joe is an amazing mentor and friend for me. I'm so grateful to be here with him today. I have learned so much from Joe. He's the national consultant for faith formation for Loyola Press, but has been in pastoral ministry for over 40 years and has authored more than 20 books, including his most recent, Preparing Hearts and Minds, 9 Simple Ways for Catechists to Cultivate a Living Faith. And he's presented in more than 150 dioceses in North America. I've seen Joe speak on countless occasions, and I know Joe's work, his ministry, is the fruit of living this reality in his own parish context and also out across the country. If you haven't checked out the blog, The Catechist Journey, I'd really like to give it a shout out for that, because there's some great information, tips, and literally hundreds. The breadth of Joe's knowledge around catechesis is so vast. Sometimes when I'm stuck looking for something on catechesis, I will Google what I'm looking for and Joe's name, and I guarantee you somewhere along the way, Joe has written something about it. So Joe, thank you so much for being with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your new book, Joe?
Absolutely. Thank you for so many kind words, Julianne. In case people are wondering about the color changing on my face and getting more red there, don't try to adjust anything. That's just me blushing a little bit after all the wonderful things Julianne said. But yeah, Preparing Hearts and Minds is a book that I really feel is so needed at this time, because I think I really feel like too many of us as catechists, we're trying to plant the seeds of the gospel on a soil that's compacted. And the seeds are just bouncing off, and we keep trying to throw more seeds, and we keep trying to throw bigger seeds. And what we're not doing is we're not tilling that soil. You know that if you want to plant some grass seed or any kind of flower, you've got to soften up the soil and till the soil. We call that evangelization, and even pre-evangelization. And so what I'm saying in a nutshell is that too often we jump to catechize before we have evangelized. And Preparing Hearts and Minds is all about how we till the soil. In fact, my original title was called Tilling the Soil.
Oh,
And they told me at Loyola Press, well, then people are going to think it's a book about gardening. It's like, well, that's why we have marketing people. But that's why you see on the cover, we do have the little, rake there about tilling the soil. So strategies for tilling the soil of people's hearts and minds so that the word of God can truly transform them.
yeah, Joe, we've been having conversations just, when we gathered about this, and also like nationally at events like the RE Congress or various conferences that we have been out together. And the tilling of the soil piece, we talk about, but there's some practical pieces that go along with that. And today you're going to share some of those practical pieces with us, right?
Absolutely. Catechists are very practical people. They want to know, what can I do differently when I get into my setting? So I'm going to be sharing 9 very practical ways of doing that. And even before we do that, we have kind of a fun question to toss at people to get them thinking about the role of a catechist and how irreplaceable catechists are.
Absolutely. Now, we have had some technology today. We are all set with that. We're here to the magic of technology, but this is a really interesting question. Can robots serve as catechists? So Joe is going to launch the poll, and there's a couple of options. Can robots serve as catechists? So you have 4 options in front of you. You only get one choice. This is not multiple choice here. Is it yes, absolutely, possibly not, or absolutely not? So we'd invite you to share your response to that question. It's anonymous, so we don't see how you're voting. We just see the percentage of folks who are voting, but please share here. And also, if you've already voted, tell us why you think maybe yes or no. Interact with us in the chat bar. I'd love to see what you kind of got coming up with here. Again, we're having folks come in. We have got some folks coming in from Nigeria and New York. Welcome. For those that are just joining us, we're just inviting you to be part of a poll here.
So I see Harry Dudley's the first one to respond and chat with some thoughts about why. He says about how robots cannot be catechists. So yeah, people are putting in their thoughts there. So yeah, go ahead, Julianne. Let us know what people are thinking.
Yeah, there's some great ones here. And I mean, these are just, you can tell these are veteran catechists here speaking. Yeah. He's like, I'm not really sure, because at the heart of catechesis lies relationship, and we must be relationship. A robot has no faith to echo, given that the word catechesis comes from the Greek word echo. We need to give humanity the human touch to faith. Someone is saying, well, technology really doesn't have limits. So maybe there's something there. So responses are coming in. Robots can give info, but not give it the heart. So there's a lot of comments in here about yes, no, some people are all over with this. So it's really, really interesting today. We do have the response to the poll though. So I don't know if you can all see that, but let me just read those responses to you. And actually some of the responses that are coming in the chat are so incredibly deep. They're just really incredible. So can robots serve as catechists? So we have 2% who said absolutely yes.
Can I just say something about that, Julianne? I don't want anyone to feel bad that said yes, because I honestly think that at some point robots may serve as catechist aids. I think that we can have robotics come in and help with reviews and engage, students with questions and answers and games and things like that. So I do think that technology will be used, but the question is, can they replace us? And I think that's how most people are answering.
Yeah, there's some really great questions. Kids love technology. Yes, they can help us, but really that personal witness is really important. So possibly is 13%, probably not, said 16%, but the vast majority, almost 70% have said absolutely not. So I'm going to close out the poll. And again, we're getting some great responses. So Joe, you've just gave us an exercise in really defining the role of catechesis. And in fact, our chat bar, if you were looking for the profile of a catechist, it's right there in the chat
It's right
bar.
there. Absolutely. And I want catechists to know that if you were to ask the leadership of the church, our magisterium, how they would answer this question, they would be the first to answer absolutely not. The Directory for Catechesis tells us in many ways that there's no way we can replace the person of the catechist. And that's what I want to focus on today, because when we're talking about evangelizing, that's something that takes a human being to understand what's going on in the heart and mind of another person. It's not just a matter of passing on information. It's a matter of getting to know people, listening to their stories, listening to where they're at, and then judging where can I meet them? Meet them where they're at and begin that journey with them. And so absolutely catechists are irreplaceable, and we want to talk about, well, what are 9 things today that we're going to talk about catechists can do that really a robot could not.
Yeah, this is great. One of those words we talked about earlier that was in that definition of evangelizing catechesis and came up right throughout the comments was the role of encounter and being facilitators of an encounter. And Joe, I know you want to situate this encounter against the backdrop of the Directory for Catechesis, which was promulgated and came out on July 20th in 2020. So very, very interesting time frame in the life of the world. But this document came, which had some beautiful new, challenging, stretching language for us in terms of evangelizing catechesis. Can you talk about, Joe, the idea of a facilitator of encounter and really this word mystagogue? Can you share with us a little about that?
Absolutely. Well, there's a big difference between me saying, I'd like to tell you about someone, and I'd like to introduce you to someone. So if each of you were to think of the celebrity you would most like to meet and insert the name, I'd like to tell you about or I can introduce you to. That's a total difference there. And that's the difference between being a teacher of a subject and a facilitator of an encounter. We're not just saying, I want to tell you about Jesus Christ. We're saying, I want to introduce you to Jesus Christ, someone that I know and someone who is present. That's a world of difference when we come down to it. So we are facilitators of an encounter, and the Directory for Catechesis tells us that we're not just teachers, but we are mystagogues. And that may be a new word for many of our attendees today, and we might be thinking, a mystagogue, what is that? Well, look at the root word. We know it has to do with mystery. What does a mystagogue do? A mystagogue is someone who leads others into mystery. And that's why we have that picture of Moses in the burning bush, that we encounter God in mysterious ways. God doesn't appear to us like a little hologram, like on Star Wars, and so on. God manifests his presence to us in a variety of mysterious ways. And it's our job as catechists to help unpack that mystery and to invite others into this mystery. And it means that we're going to need a language of mystery as well. And so as we get into these 9 ways, we're going to bump into that several times. And one point in depth, we're going to talk about this language of mystery, because in our culture, we think mystery is something to be solved. But in scripture and tradition, a mystery is something to enter into. And to encounter. We're not trying to solve it, we want to encounter it. So we're going to talk about being mystagogues today, Julianne.
I love that. I've heard you say this because I've sat as you've been giving keynotes through the years and I've paid attention. As a good student of the Master Catechist, I heard you say many years ago that we're not teaching religion and faith like it is math, like a subject, but we're trying to help people embrace a mystery that's unfolding around them, within them. And I think that this is so important, this idea of encountering mystery. Now, Joe, you've 9 specific ways that catechists can facilitate this encounter with mystery. And this next one, or this first point, around narrative and language, let me just change the slide here and we'll look at that a little bit. This is a very profound point. How do we help others recognize narratives that diminish and destroy? Help us understand what this looks like, Joel.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that none of us lives in a bubble or a vacuum. We live within a context, and that context is, we can call it a narrative, a story. It's giving us messages all the time, and unfortunately, many of the messages that our various contexts give us can be quite hurtful. They can be quite unhealthy. They are narratives that diminish and destroy. We may not even realize it, that we are carrying and picking up and passing on these narratives. And so you see on your screen, we can see that our culture many times gives the message that in order to be happy, I need pleasure and control, popularity, fame, money, power, conquest, possession, success, a thin body, prestige, youth, and beauty. Those would all be nice things to have, but it's not true that we have to have those things in order to be happy. Those are empty promises, and they are narratives that can really cause damage in people's lives. And so as a result of that, many of us are walking around with narratives that are very unhealthy. And so we may be thinking that if I don't have all those things, then I'm inferior, I'm unreliable, I'm uninteresting, I'm undeserving, I'm shameful, ugly, fat, worthless, untalented, unlovable, incapable. And so the first thing that we need to do in faith formation as a mystagogue, as someone who's helping people on their journey, is to help them recognize these narratives, to help them recognize that there is bad news being proclaimed, and our job is to bring in good news. I think sometimes we make that into kind of a trite thought. Oh, I proclaim the good news. Well, what's the bad news? What we need to be replacing something. And so that's what we need to focus on in this notion of helping people in 12-step groups. They call it stinking thinking. Right?
Oh, interesting.
That you have to look at your narrative, that it's not just Alcoholics Anonymous is not just about alcohol.
Yeah, Joe,
It's about people's narratives.
I really appreciate this piece on the language. I just want to go back one more time to these narratives, because I think they do play a huge part in people feeling like the good news doesn't always feel good because they're sitting with these narratives. But so these are words that our students may be feeling, they may be things that we've been told about ourselves. And one of the pieces that you want to move us to is a greater sense of a new narrative, changing our thinking. In order to be able to evangelize people effectively, we have to recognize this narrative and help them move to a new way of seeing. Can you help us with this new language that's coming, Joe, around rescue, restoration, and reassurance?
Yes, to sort of summarize that first step is, just think of how TV commercials, how many of them begin with, "Are you tired of?" They point out something that is wrong. Are you tired of being sick? Are you tired of losing your hair? Are you tired of being overweight? Are you tired of having the flu? We need to do that in our catechesis, because what people do is we hear those messages and we go, yeah, I am tired of that. What do you got for me? And so it creates teachable moments. And so after we help people to recognize that there are these negative messages, they're going to say, well, what do you got for me? Yeah, I don't like these messages that are diminishing me and hurting me and causing unhealthiness. What do you got for me? Well, the good news is that we have a new vision for life, a vision that can be summed up in three words, the three R's: rescue, restoration, and reassurance. I can't emphasize this enough. If someone were to ask you, what is the good news of Jesus? I think many of us would stammer and try to come up with a long explanation. It really comes down to three things: that God rescues us through his son, Jesus Christ. He restores us through Jesus. We are restored to our right relationship with the Father, and he reassures us that he is with us until the end of time. That's the good news. And it is all of salvation history, all of scripture can really be summed up by those three words. I don't think that's simplifying or making it simplistic. I think it's taking a very profound message and saying that this is what God wants for us. He wants us to know that he is near and with us to rescue us, to restore us, to reassure us. In other words, we're being presented with a new vision for life, another way of living. You know, I think of the story of the three kings, how when they visited, but then they returned to their homeland and said they went by another way. They found another way to go back. And this is what we're proclaiming, another way. The world is teaching us one way, and I don't want to condemn the world and say the world is awful, nasty. We need to be careful that there are a lot of messages that are not healthy, and we want to cut through all of that and proclaim a message that is life-giving.
I love that, Joe. I'm reflecting on a few comments that are coming in from the chat bar. A few folks were asking what's DC. And remember earlier I had talked about the new directory for catechesis.
Yeah.
DC is the abbreviation for that.
Yes.
Not to be confused with the NDC, which is the National Directory for Catechesis. So this directory is only 2 years old, and I particularly love this quote that you have chosen here. In fact, it's one of my favorite quotes from the new directory. It's new now, but it's 2 years. It's going to be new for quite a while, but this is what it says, and I just think it powerfully underscores what you have talked about. Evangelizing is not in the first place the delivery of a doctrine, but rather making present and announcing Jesus Christ. Evangelization has as its ultimate aim the fulfillment of human life. I mean, that just is very, very powerful. So, you know, encountering mystery, that's our second strategy. Let's move on to talking a little bit about your third strategy, Joe. Can you tell us about this?
Yes, so as a mystagogue, and this is again something very important that a robot could not do. A catechist is called upon to witness to others, to share our experience of encountering Jesus with others. And I think for many catechists, this can cause a little trepidation. It can be intimidating. We feel comfortable teaching doctrine, something that we may feel is a bit outside of ourselves. But it's like, wait a minute, now you're asking me to share my story, to share my encounter with Jesus. And our church is telling us, yes, that's why we're calling this a new evangelization. What's new about it is that we have to find new ways of reaching people. And one of those ways is us opening up and sharing our stories of and giving witness. So that's why we have a picture of, you know, the witness stand in a courtroom. You're asked to get up there and to say what you have seen, what you have heard, what you have experienced, and to pass along the truth about that. As catechists, there really are three types of stories that we need to become masters at. Scripture stories. We tell stories from scripture about how people's lives have been changed by encountering the divine presence. We need to tell stories of the lives of the saints, people like us, whose lives were changed by an encounter with divine grace. And then the key, we've got to tell our own stories. And I know so much, Julianne, you and I have said this, a lot of people when we propose this, they say, well, I don't have a story. And the truth is we all do. They don't have to be as dramatic as, Saul on the road to Damascus. Many of our stories are less dramatic sounding, but just as powerful. And I
Mhm.
tell catechists the very first story you should think of sharing with those you teach this year when you start, tell them how and why you became a catechist. You do have a story. And I know when I brought that up to a crowd of catechists, I asked one catechist, so how did you become a catechist? She goes, well, I was in the back of church one day and I heard someone say, hey, you. And I turned around, I'm like, who's calling me? And the pastoral associate was running after her and said, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name. And they exchanged names and they talked. And she says, I've been wanting to ask you to become a catechist. I just think you would be such a wonderful catechist. I've been watching you from a distance. Conversation went on. She became a catechist. I asked her, how long ago was that? She said 33 years ago.
Wow.
There's a story that it started with, hey, you. And
Yeah.
33 years later, she's still doing this ministry. So we all have stories to tell. And I know you're very big on people telling stories,
I
Julie.
am. I am because it's the method modeled by Jesus. He told stories of his father. He allowed people to share their stories, and in all of that, God's people wrestled, and they were able to reconcile their stories to the cross. On a personal note, one of the most powerful testimonies of witness was when I became a U.S. citizen, and I saw people from all over the world all standing together becoming a US citizen and testifying, witnessing to the fact that this was our home, this is where we wanted to be. And the tug on your heart that's there that day, but also the just the fresh identity that brings us to. So that leads me to this next point, Joe, around
Huh?
bringing your story to the cross. I think that this next piece on encountering a mystery, it's the job of the mystagogue to lead others into the mystery of the cross. Story is a great mediator of formation, but it finds its deepest meaning in the cross. And can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, when we talk about the cross, we're talking about laying down our lives. And I think there's a misunderstanding there sometimes. We think that laying down our lives means literally dying. That's the ultimate example of laying down your life. Our first responders, our military, and so on, we honor them for laying down their lives. But to lay down your life simply means to put aside your own needs, to put the needs of someone else before your own. And that's how we lay down our lives. And all of us are laying down our lives all the time. If you're a parent and you have children and you wake up at 3 in the morning to take care of their needs, you're laying down your life. You don't roll over and say, too bad, I'm going back to sleep. You get up to take care of your child. You put your own needs aside to take care of the needs of others. That is the symbol of the cross, to lay down our lives for others. And at the heart of all the stories that we tell is the cross, the laying down of our lives. So that person who was, called Hey You 33 years ago, she's been laying down her life once a week, every whatever, a Monday night, when she could be at home, eating bonbons or whatever. No, she's going to lay down her life and go and teach. And so it's setting aside your own needs. And the Gospel of John tells us that Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And so we need in our faith formation to make sure that we are apprenticing those we teach in laying down their lives for other people. That we can call that doing service. I don't like the word service projects because it makes it sound like it's once and done.
Yeah.
We want to teach them a way of life. We traditionally call them works of mercy. Works of mercy, the new directory is telling us, should be part of the curriculum. There should be days in which we actually get out of a classroom or transform the classroom and we do something, we do works of mercy, whether we're actually going out and encountering people or preparing materials that will be used. By then I'm talking about first graders putting together care packages that adults will take to the homeless, because we're not going to send first graders out onto the streets, but this has to become part of our curriculum, so that we are really teaching others how to lay down their lives.
This is beautiful, Joe. There's two really great little comments in the chat bar that I wanted to share.
Please.
Someone said your comment about "Hey, you" really resonated, because it said it was just called DRE, so I didn't know who the name was, but just 24 years ago, Sister Bernadette said to me, "Hey, you."
How about that?
24 years. And then Elizabeth wanted to share this with us. Approximately 49 years, started in 8th grade, all because Sister Mary Beth needed a helper one day and asked this quiet, shy kid from a broken home to help.
Wow. It's a dramatic story.
It is.
We don't think, we just think, well, that's how it happened. That is a story that causes people to stop and think. And those stories will cause the young people that you're teaching, the teens, the adults, whoever you're teaching, to stop and think about how you changed your life and why did you do that. And so the more we tell those stories, I think we're afraid sometimes because we're thinking, well, my life is private. Well, the church isn't asking us to, bear all of the skeletons in our closets and so on, but to open the door a crack into our hearts and to let people know how following Jesus has changed me, even in just small ways. My friend Gary Jansen calls them micro shifts, little changes, micro shifts in our lives, and a little shift in your course can, over the long run, make your life completely different.
I love this whole piece around, we're at the halfway mark, and Andre just said, wow, this last piece has been so impactful. This just is just incredible quote that just speaks of this whole piece on being kind of catechesis and in action and authentic catechesis. It becomes ever clearer that there's no proclamation of the faith if this is not a sign of God's mercy. The practice of mercy is already itself an authentic catechesis. It's catechesis in action. That is really powerful. Joe,
love that phrase.
I do too. We're going to move along just a little bit here around encountering mystery, and the job of the mystagogue to lead others to the risen Christ. So we have this moment of taking our story and reconciling it to the cross. You've shared with us the 3 R's, but now we're moving even deeper into, if you will, permit me, a 4th R, the risen Christ. And this is getting to some of the comments that are coming up in the chat bar around the mystagogue must be a person of prayer. Share with us just a little bit about this particular point from your book around encountering the risen Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. So numbers 4 and 5 obviously are connected. Death and resurrection. We say those in the same breath, don't we? And so while we have crosses in our homes, there's one right over your shoulder, Julianne, reminding us to lay down our lives. We put those up there because Christ is risen. The story didn't end there. I think of TV commercials that always say, but wait, there's more. And so while the cross is this powerful moment, the reason it is powerful is because Jesus defeated the cross. He defeated death. And so that cross is a symbol of victory. That cross over your shoulder, Julianne, is like a trophy saying, we are victorious over death. And so the risen Christ is a living person, someone that we meet and that we encounter. I have a personal pet peeve that for some reason, we only use the phrase risen Christ during the 50 days of Easter. We always talk about the risen Christ, and then after Pentecost, he's just back to being Jesus. And it's like, no, we have got to remember that the Christ we proclaim every day, even on Good Friday, is the risen Christ, which means he is alive and that he is present with us. And too often in our catechetical settings, we invite that risen Christ in and we make him sit in the corner while we talk about him. And as facilitators of an encounter, we need to find ways that we're going to invite that risen Christ in, or I should say invite all of us to enter into the presence of the risen Christ, because he's there already. And how will we now encounter this mysterious presence? And this means, and I saw someone had a comment, I think it was one of our Deacon Jerry's, one of our many
Our
Deacon
three today.
Jerry's, yeah, said that the mystagogue must be a person of prayer. And this is the key. If we are going to help anyone to encounter the risen one, we need to be teaching how to pray, not just prayers, not how to say prayers, as important as that is, how to pray. And we need to be making prayer part of our curriculum. Too often we think of prayer as, well, it'd be nice if we get to it. It's a nice little add-on. It's like a little frosting on the cake. No, it is teaching and facilitating that encounter. And so the directory tells us that when catechesis is permeated by a climate of prayer, the assimilation of the entire Christian life reaches its summit. So the key is creating a climate of prayer. And we're going to build on this. We're going to come back to this. And I think it's in point number 7, actually. But leading others in prayer, leading guided reflections. I know that you recognize that as a powerful way of catechizing and in leading others to encounters, Julianne. What are your thoughts about reflective prayer, guided reflections, etc.?
Yeah, I think unlocking our religious imagination is so powerful. Children, and I think adults, I think we move so fast through life. I don't think we have the opportunity sometimes to slow down and to use our imagination to bridge the now and the not yet, as the Irish people would say, the betwixt and the between.
I
But
love it.
guided reflection can be kind of this liminal space where we invite people in and they can imagine they're entering into the story. And I agree with you on this, creating a climate of prayer. The next point, Joe, is really critical. Inviting people to take the next step in their journey. But I want to share with you, Joe, just there's some incredible stories coming through the chat bar about how
Seeing them flash up.
someone invited someone else to take this next step in their journey. Ruth Ann from Ontario says, remember to be a voice that asks, will you help? Because that's being attentive to God in prayer. Who can I ask to help me? Who can we help? You have no idea how this will impact others. She says, I asked a young man with cerebral palsy to be an altar server. He was nervous, shy, and scared, but grew into one of our best. He graduated high school this year and thanked me. He had the courage to run and be a part of the Special Olympics. His letter of thanks for being there to ask him to help inspired him to try more ways and to do greater things in life. This is at the heart of your next point, Joe, which is inviting others to take that next step. And I'm so excited to share that we can share these comments and keep them, because there's such great indications of people stepping out in joy and in courage to invite others to consider the good news. So talk to us about this. This is a huge piece for us right now, and I think many people might be scared about this.
We are, I think, a little bit scared about this because it's bringing us into a little closer contact with people, and but again, this is something that a robot cannot do. That means looking at another human being and assessing where they're at and thinking of, I think I know what would be good for this person. And so invitations are an important part of being a mystagogue, knowing that someone is perhaps on the threshold of taking the next step and saying, yeah, I'd like to invite you to think about a retreat that's coming up. I'd like to invite you to think about the service experience that's coming up. I think you would make a good lector or acolyte, server, catechist aide. That this is part of how we invite people to take the next steps on their journey. You're showing a couple of pictures there that are my story, and I'll tell a very quick story. And then, Julianne, I want to hear you share a story of being invited. The picture on the left, that black and white picture, is from 1976, high school, my high school. I'm the guy in the middle with a lot more hair than I have now, and the big bow tie, playing guitar. The priest is Father Terry Baum, my chemistry teacher. He invited me and some other guys to play guitar at Mass at our high school, the Jesuit high school we went to. He knew we were all playing guitars. We wanted to become rock stars, etc. He said, how about you guys play for mass? I'll sing, just need you to play. I thought, okay, cool, I'll do that. I did that. I enjoyed it. It was the first time in my high school career that I was noticed for anything. I was
Oh,
not an athlete. I was not number one in my class. I didn't do anything special. I'm just your average Joe. But it was the first time that afterwards guys were coming up to me. It was an all boys school. Hey, Joe, that was pretty cool. You know, you're playing guitar for mass. And I was like, wow, I've been noticed for something. And I went back to my parish and I joined a guitar group there and played at mass, met the woman who became my wife for now almost 40 years. And there's a picture of me and Father Terry and my buddy Mike at our 40th reunion just a couple of years ago. Invitations change lives.
they really do. I'm smiling here, looking at those. I mean, the passage of time has moved on, but the bonds between you connect you to that moment. I was just thinking about when this came up and I saw, what was an invitation that encouraged me to take a next step on my journey. For me, honestly, Joe, was the invitation to write with you. And
Oh,
I remember as a child, I said, I always want to write just one book. I think I could do one. And life happens and your life moves and you think about it, but you took it away. And then when you reached out to me and invited me to co-partner with you on our book, The Catechist Backpack, there were so many parts of that process for me that have illustrated the points that you just talked about. You can do it, Julianne, that encouragement, being able to see something and call me out of that, mentor me, say, hey, I feel free to make it your own here. I put this together, like all of that apprenticeship pieces that we talked about really, really, it was just really impactful for me. And so I want to thank you, Joe, for taking a chance and inviting me to do something that I had always held within me as a dream, but didn't have the courage to pursue.
well,
So
thank you for sharing that, Julianne. And it's a privilege for me to be able to have invited you. The Holy Spirit prompts us. And so the catechist, listen to the Holy Spirit, help the Holy Spirit to prompt you to look into people's hearts and to see what's next on their journey, and then take the risk and invite them.
yeah, and that experience for me just illustrated, there's so much that we can do when we touch people's hearts, when we are authentic. And Joe, I'm smiling at this because a little note, a couple of years ago, Joe presented at the USCCB for the Evangelization and Catechesis Committee. And I happened to be at that meeting, and Joe came with this chart, and it really sparked some incredible conversation amongst those that were there, and especially the bishops. But I call this the wheel of mystery. And so can you talk to us about this wheel of mystery? Because there's a simplicity to it, but there's also a depth here in terms of the methodologies that you're cycling through.
Yes, this goes back to point 5 that we were talking about a little bit before, about creating a climate of prayer. The way we do this is by bringing in a climate of mystery into our setting, and bringing in a language of mystery. It's important for us to recognize that some of the most profound moments in life transcend words. That
Mhm.
words don't suffice. That sometimes we simply need to bow our head or to embrace someone, or to grab someone's hand, or whatever, or to cry, whatever it may be. Um, we have a language of mystery that we've been taught as Catholics, and it's a language that we encounter in the Eucharist and our Eucharistic celebrations. It's a liturgical language. And if you look at that chart there, I wish we had time to go through all of them, but that'll be another webinar, I think. But in our catechesis, how do we utilize space? How do we
Mhm.
utilize music and song, silence, storytelling, movement and gesture, sign, symbol, ritual, works of mercy? In other words, encounters with the divine that go beyond words. It's a language we use at Mass, and then for some reason, when we cross over into catechesis, we forget this language and it becomes all words again. And we really need to capture this language, bring it into our settings, and encourage, not encourage, but to invite those we're teaching to enter into the divine presence using this language. I talk about this in my book, Beyond the Catechist Toolbox. And it's something that I like to unpack for people, because these symbols and signs and symbols and rituals, they touch us at a different level. And so my bottom line for number 7 is that our catechesis should resemble the Mass more than class. I've
Oh,
been
I
saying
love
that
that.
for years. I apologize if some people have heard me say it too many times. I can't say it enough. We have got to create this climate of prayer.
I agree with you. I have said this many times. My grandmother was famous for a little expression: an arrow that's aimed at the head won't pierce the heart. And actually, earlier in the webinar, Joe, we had a significant number of comments about robots don't have hearts, so they can't catechize. And so this is all about really deepening people's commitment to Jesus and really drawing them into the life of discipleship. And I know from the comments and from the questions that people are starting to kind of percolate for us, it's, how do we take classroom and provide concrete opportunities for people to really explore new ways of thinking, speaking, and acting? Can you tell us more about this, Joe?
Yeah, when we invite people to enter into an experience, very often people will immerse themselves. And I think of in sports and athletics, especially college sports. You look at college fans and how they immerse themselves into the experience of that team. They identify with that team. They wear the colors of that team. They paint their face the color of the team, and so everyone knows um, where their allegiance lies.
Yeah.
The way they talk, the way they dress, everything. You can tell, oh, you're a Texas Longhorn fan. I can tell. We had someone at the beginning talking about the Brookfield Bulldogs. Okay, go Bulldogs. We immerse ourselves to that, to whom we are owe our allegiance. We need to help those that we're teaching find ways of letting the world know where their allegiance lies. That we don't just blend in. Bishop Barron talks about we need to avoid being something he calls beige Catholicism,
Mhm.
that we just blend in. It's like, no, the people in this picture that I'm showing you wearing those orange shirts, they're standing out as, we are fans of this team. The way we help Catholics to stand out is by teaching Catholic practices. What do I mean by that? Catholics don't just pray for people, we light candles for them. We wear scapulars, we mark feast days, not just the date, but
Yeah.
we call it, today is the feast day of so-and-so. We pray novenas, we say grace at meals, even if we're at McDonald's. We keep images in our homes and so on. Numerous ways that we let the world know that we have an allegiance to Jesus Christ. And in my book, Practice Makes Catholic, I talk about how we need to catechize others, not just tell them to do these things, but to catechize them on why do we do them. In short, my example I like to use is the novena. I ask Catholic audiences, how many of you know what a novena is? They all raise their hand. How many of you know how many days it is? They all raise their hand, 9. How many of you know why it's 9? And almost always, all the hands go down. Well, I don't know. We were just taught to do it for 9 days. So growing up as a kid, I thought that was a magic number. Well, that's superstition. It was years later that I was taught that it's scriptural, that when Jesus ascended to heaven, he told his disciples, remain here in prayer. And they did that for 9 days. The disciples and Mary gathered in that upper room, prayed for 9 days, and on the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit came. And so that sacramental gesture is scriptural. It's not just some superstition. So we need to really provide concrete suggestions for those we teach and their families in their homes, new ways of thinking, speaking, and acting so that their faith is obvious to other people.
I love this. You know, a couple of years ago, Joe, I had heard you share something similar to this from Practice Makes Catholic, where you had said to me, you know, Julianne, take what you see at church and do that with your children. And I have three young children, but at the time I was a new mom. And one of my favorite Catholic practices that kind of was sparked by Practice Makes Catholic was the washing of the feet. And so on Holy Thursday, my husband and I, he washes our feet. He washes my feet, he washes the children's feet, and then I do that the same thing. And then the children wash our feet and they wash each other's feet. And I just love that impetus of take what you see at Mass. And I know you incorporate sprinkling rites, and this is the day the Lord has made when you have children process in and out of your classroom. Those are all really simple ways to do that, right, Joe?
It absolutely is. There are very simple ways. The example you shared is quite profound. I know you've shared that on Facebook, and it brings me to tears almost. And I know it's not a very comfortable thing. I know you've told me you don't like having your feet touched,
I
so to have,
don't.
your husband, your children washing your feet. I mean, it's just like Peter, you won't wash my feet. Yeah, they can be as profound as that, or just as simple as, having a little holy water in the home, to bless our children with, or to bless food. To take my grandchildren like to take the little bottle of holy water on Easter, and they get to sprinkle. They all
I
take
love
their
that.
turns. They're like, oh, good, I got to make a mess, and sacramental should make a bit of a mess.
They
It's
should
like,
do. Joe,
yeah.
I'm just saying that too. Joe, just in the comments, it's like perfect timing. I have the holy water available at the entrance door of my classroom. So
Mm,
this is wonderful, Joe. I can't
yeah.
believe that we're almost to the ninth point here, and I'm seeing some great questions coming in here and
Good.
comments. So we do want to get to those. So if you just hang on with us for a few minutes, we will get to those questions. But this next piece kind of deepens what we were just talking about, Joe, which is kind of this language around mystery and apprenticeship here. Talk to us a little bit about formation is more than just instruction. This is really about initiation.
Yeah, so the final thing that I'm going to mention today that a robot really cannot do is to apprentice someone into a way of life. Um, our directory for catechesis talks about this notion of an apprenticeship. And, this is what a mystagogue does. An apprentice has a mentor looking over their shoulder. And so that's why I chose a picture of a mechanic. And he's letting the young fellow do the work. And I know you're smiling because your dad and your brother, right?
Brother, no, they
Have,
are, my dad
yeah,
apprenticed my brother as a mechanic. So this is like
okay,
my life
right.
right here. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is, I want you to think, catechist, think of yourself as this person in that picture, or the picture below, the accompanist. The accompanist is in the background, um, making sure that she is following along and also leading the young person, but the focus is on that young person. As a catechist, the focus is not on us. I remember as a young teacher, teaching my first class as a student teacher, and afterwards my cooperating teacher said, yeah, that was all right. And I was like, what? I thought I was really great. He said, yeah, but it was all about you. He said the spotlight was on you the whole time. He said the job of a teacher is to turn the spotlight off of him or herself and onto their students. And I think that's true as catechists as well. It's not about us getting up and giving the most wonderful presentation so that everyone goes, wow. It's about apprenticing, turning their attention and saying, so what do you think about this? How do you say this? How do you express your faith? How would you put this into practice? And then helping them to take those steps so that we are really helping them on their spiritual journey. And the last point I'll make, because it's time for us to get to some Q&A, and I'm dying to hear, there's lots of comments flashing up on my screen here. This is going to be something profound beyond what a catechist can do. We need as a church to look at how we catechize, and we need to think of how can we break out of this mode of grade 1, grade 2, grade level catechesis that is kind of a cookie cutter.
Mhm.
um that's not apprenticeship. We need to take people where they are, assess where they are, and then work with them where they're at and take them to the next step. It's going to require a lot more personal one-on-one, more like a catechumenate experience rather than a school experience. So that's something that we as a church, as publishers, as parishes, we have to wrap our heads around it and figure out how to create settings in which apprenticeship can truly happen.
Yeah, and I think, Joe, I used that example earlier of you inviting me to do something big for me, to do something brave, right with me. And one of the pieces that happens when you apprentice someone is you share feedback. And, that's often very helpful. Someone in the chat bar mentioned, theological reflection on your experiencing and noticing where God is aware. And I know you'd agree with that. We are seeing questions come in, so I do want to give time to those questions. And Joe, you were just talking about this, but change is hard for people. And we just wrestled with this big idea of apprenticeship and the catechumenate model. If you were a catechist in a parish, what would be some of your advice as you know change is hard and it's change for the whole system in the parish? Where would you start, Joe?
I would start with the climate of prayer and making that change. Those can be very subtle. And so taking a look at where you're teaching and how you're teaching and making some subtle changes in the space that you're in, so that when people walk in, it doesn't feel like they're going to school, but that they're going to church. And it feels more like a prayerful setting. And so the setting, the style of your presentation, including some music and silence and moments of prayer, so that the change is palpable and it's something that is noticeable. I remember one time doing this with an 8th grade class, and the first day this young fellow walked in and he stopped and he looked at what I had done to the room, because it was in his school. And I had changed the room and made a circle with chairs and a prayer center and music playing. And he walked in and he goes, "What's all this?" And it's exactly what we should want to get out of them. What's all this? Not just, oh, here I am back in my classroom and they're going to put a book in front of me and I'm going to read, so I would change with the climate.
Yeah, I love that. It's just like when Jesus proclaimed the parable. What's all this? There's that note of what it is.
What's all this?
I love it. So Joe, this model will work for adult faith formation. I know that you've talked about that, but a question came through the chat bar about, would this model, would these encountering mystery components work for adult faith formation? How would you respond to that?
Absolutely. In fact, I think we're bringing some of the adult model and saying that we need to apply this across the board. Adults don't learn like children. And so we need to treat adults differently. And much of what I'm sharing comes from my experience of working in the catechumenate. And when I was in the parish and worked in RCIA, and then thought to myself, well, how come I'm working with adults this way, and then with children, it's like I'm a school teacher again? How come it's not like the catechumenate setting? And so I want to say, connected with that as well, is one of the ways that I think we can make these changes happen is by focusing more on family catechesis, by bringing families together and helping families to implement this in their homes. That we're not the ones who are on for doing all of this, but catechists can work with families to help make their homes truly a domestic church where they have a climate of prayer.
I'm loving this. There's a couple of comments going, yes, that is great. Now, this is a tricky question, Joe, but I think it works with this. The confirmation, the fall off or the drop off after confirmation, how would you speak to that?
Well, I think I learned years ago from Sister Marlene Halpin, said the reason that young people are walking away after confirmation is because they're walking away from a subject that was taught. So that's actually where I got this notion of we're not teachers of a subject. She startled me when she said, we're not introducing them to a person, we're teaching them a subject. So they walk away from a subject of religion like they walk away from every other subject that they're taught, except the ones that they want to carry with them for the rest of their lives, for their careers or their personal likes, like literature or something. And so how do we address this walking away? It's a lot harder to walk away from a relationship.
Yeah.
And so we need to be focusing on building relationships with the Lord and entrusting the Holy Spirit to maintain that relationship throughout life, and not
Mhm.
just something that they can walk away from and say, well, I don't need that anymore. I'm done. I'm graduated from the church.
Especially because this is a continuum. A formation is a continuum. Discipleship is a way of life. And you addressed that really well. There's a question I do want to hear. I know we're getting tight on time, Joe, but I know it's timely for a lot of people. And it's around technology. Technology in the classroom. On the one hand, we have, technology allows us to be here together, Joe, today. And but on the other hand, you want to create a prayerful environment. And so Nicole is asking, how do you work with technology like phones during sessions? I would like to use phones occasionally for doing quizzes or polls, but would prefer not to have it in class because they can be distracting. Can you address that, Joe?
Yeah, and that's why I think I made that comment early on when I said that robots cannot be teachers, but I said they might be catechist aids, because I'm not anti-technology. We need technology. Young people expect technology. If we're not using technology, they think that we are irrelevant. So technology, how does it help create a climate of prayer? You should see the gizmos that I bring into classes when I teach, because I want music. And I'm not going to lug my guitar everywhere I go and sing like I did back, 30 years ago. No, I bring my little remote speaker, Bluetooth speaker that's this big, and I bring my phone, and I have a playlist on my phone, and I play music that way, and I show videos on screen, music videos that are of a liturgical song, and it's a meditation. I show slides that we meditate on. Visio Divina can be
Love
done
that.
with slides and PowerPoints. So yeah, let's not think that somehow technology is going to prevent us from creating a climate of prayer.
Yeah.
Figure out how technology can help you establish a climate of prayer.
I'm appreciating that. I know we're coming up to time. One last question, Joe, and then
Yes.
we'll do some wrap up here. And we are going to have the recording available, and a lot of people are responding saying, hey, I'd love to show this to my catechists. I'd love to show this to my teachers. And that is a great use of this material here today to continue that fire. But somebody asked, and I think it's a good question, especially because we have various cultural contexts. We have catechists from all over the world here. We want to strengthen the life of discipleship of our young person. But someone has asked a question about bullying for young people. And I think it's an important, how would you address a situation in which children are getting bullied for talking about going to church, going to religious education? Any words of wisdom for catechists who are seeing this and recognizing that the real impact it has on students' mental health and spiritual health?
Well, first of all, I think, bullying is one of those examples of the brokenness of our world that young people especially are experiencing, and that we need to bring in as something that we need to bring the good news to. And so when we talk about bullying, there are going to be people in front of us who are going to go, yeah, I'm a victim of that. This hurts. And what are you offering? The good news of Jesus should speak to real situations like bullying. We need to get real. We need to get gritty about the situations that we are addressing. Now, the matter of young people being bullied because of their faith, I think that's where we share stories and we talk about, well, how did I sometimes, feel like I was being bullied for my faith? How did I, cope with that? How did I respond to that? What are healthy ways of responding? We have to give life advice. A robot can't do that. We have to look into ourselves or stories of someone else that we know and tell stories, share stories that they can reflect on and say, okay, I'm going to try that. It worked for you, or it worked for Saint so-and-so, or it worked for someone in the gospel. I'm going to try that. So that's that importance of the sharing of stories. That we don't just teach doctrine, but we have to bring it into it. Now, how did this play out in my life or in the lives of the saints? And I think you should give it a try, because it's life-giving.
Oh, and I love that we started. It's the Alpha and the Omega. We're back to that first
Yeah.
point that we talked about that encounter with Jesus and bringing people to that place of encounter. Joe, I want to thank you so much. There's just so many lovely comments coming in, and from people just for your person, for the wisdom, the experience, and also for your availability for catechists. The responses that you put out on chat when people email you on their blog or comment here and there on social media. Just very, very grateful to have you today. So thank you, Joe, for this conversation.
Thank you, Julianne. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure spending this time with you. You can tell how excited I am. Julianne, you do such a great job of setting the table. Can't thank you enough. Look forward to the next opportunity we can do something like this.
I'm grateful for this time too, Joe. I'm always grateful for any time we get to tease each other about our accents and really just kind of hear what we're seeing in our classrooms and in real life. Joe's new book, Preparing Hearts and Minds, is available from Loyola Press. The subtitle is 9 Simple Ways for Catechists to Cultivate a Living Faith. This would be a great retreat day, in-service day, an opportunity to really gather. When Joe talks about catechists, he's also talking about Catholic school teachers, parents, anyone that's in that role. So if you're looking for more information on this book, you can just kind of hold up your phone. That's with the QR code. It's going to take you right to a special link where you can order the book. Just want to remind you that the recording is going to be available soon at thecatechistjourney.com. And we would invite you to continue to stay engaged with Joe and his ministry and all the good work that he's doing. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless and have a wonderful day.